So, welcome to the Kickass Midlife Method podcast. And I'm joined this evening by some members of the community, and there'll be some more people listening to this later. So, this is Midlife Consistency and Chaos. So, we're recording this kind of at half term, but it's kind of relevant to whether you've got kids on half term, school holidays, people who travel for business trips, and indeed like midlife episodes when you've out of routine because of having to look after aging parents. It kind of covers so many different scenarios. So we're going to cover why disrupted routines trigger anxiety, because I see this a lot when people kind of go away or something happens, it sends everybody into a complete anxiety meltdown. What actually happens if you take time off, so you can kind of get a bit of perspective on it anyway. How you build consistency when habits aren't fully embedded yet. So this is kind of for somebody who might have been doing this for or might have been exercising and eating really nourishingly for quite a long time, then it's a little bit easier. If you've just started, then when the holidays get in the way, it can be a little bit more of a red flag. Nutrition strategies when you're out of routine, how to reset, and then turning off routine wins into long-term habits, what you can actually take from your learning when you go away on for holiday and when you're out of your routine that actually can feed back, because sometimes that kind of perspective is gives you a little bit of reflection back on your day-to-day life. So disruption and anxiety, who here listening in feels like whenever the thought of going away and getting out of your routine comes up, that you feel quite worried about it. So one, if you do, two, if you're like quite relaxed and it doesn't really bother you. So yes. Two, we've got a one, we've got a two. Anyone else? So a couple of people are like a two, are not bothered, but it looks like most people are one. So when routine disappears, like so at the moment, half term, caring for elderly parents is another one that I see quite a lot. Uncertainty rises. And so lots of, I think we spoke about this in an episode before about control and how when things are uncertain, particularly in midlife brains, when estrogen has declined, and therefore we're not as able to deal with anxiety and the stress hormone that comes up, then it can create this real overwhelm of anxiety. Um, so and then what happens is that all or nothing thinking kicks in. Often what happens is you swing between over restriction or overindulgence, um, uh, and then often decision fatigue. So this kicks in if you've started to, for some of the people on this call, you've done that kind of tracking where you're tracking in the morning all the way through the day, and that helps to take out decision making, so it makes it easier. When you're away from home, away from your normal routine, suddenly you've got more decisions to make. And again, that can lead to poorer food choices, for instance. And then that movement drops. Because your structure disappears, whether it's something that you go to the gym, you're used to going to the gym you go to, or you have your kit at home and suddenly that's gone and it can leave you a little bit like, oh my God, I'm doing so well. What happens? Um, but taking a step back, so actually the research shows also that, sorry, coming back to the same point that disrupted routines increase your cortisol and perceived stress. So as I was talking about before, that decision fatigue leads to a lower self-control around food choices. And habit disruption is one of the biggest predictors of relapse into old behaviors. So yeah, as I was saying, I'll start again next week is typically what happens. Oh, I'll just give it all up and start again next week. Grazing or snacking without structure, skipping workouts entirely, over-reliance on sugar or caffeine often happens in half term as well when you've got kids and you're trying to keep them entertained. And that catastrophizing, I've ruined everything. It's all pointless. Everything I've done has all been a waste of time because I'm back to square one again when you're not. So, yeah, taking a step back. So, actually, in reality, the science shows that a few days off, or even a few weeks, but definitely a few days, doesn't destroy muscle mass. So, it doesn't cause fat gain. It doesn't reverse long-term progress, and it doesn't slow your metabolism. What actually happens, so you can sometimes come off a couple of days or even a day, and your weight might have gone up, but it has nothing to do with your weight, which is why I'm always banging on to all of you to do your waist and your hip measurements and to look at your fat composition, not your weight, because you can come back from having a day out or a couple of days away or a week off. And if you've been traveling a lot, so if you travel for work, so I know we have someone who comes from New York to England sometimes, then that can cause you to hold on to more water. So it's gonna automatically make you look a little bit more bloated. It's gonna add weight, but it's not real. It's just travel salt. Particularly half-term holidays, you might be potentially eating things that are not as nourishing, might be some more processed food or out, so it's going to have more salt. Digestion is going to feel different. Your energy may dip, and scales are just going to fluctuate temporarily. But the real risk with going on holiday or disruption to your routine is really more about the mental. I don't know whether you all recognize that it's actually that feeling of like I've blown it. It's all going to be messed up. What if I can't get control back when I go back? You know, it's that feeling of like I feel really in control or in tune. What if I go away and then I lose it all again when I come back? So consistency is a mindset. So related also to those people who've just started something, it's so important that whether you're away, whether you're looking after elderly parents, whether you have a holiday, whether you go away for work, it's that you have this consistency of mindset that there are some things that you absolutely stick to because it actually helps when you come back for the bigger things. So say for instance, you couldn't do any exercise in your gym or you're at home and there's nothing you could do, or that you can, but say that you couldn't, then sticking to some things that you can stick to would just make the you identifying yourself as somebody who consistently sticks to something will help longer term. So set your kind of non-negotiables, you know, your daily anchors, whether that's like all of you, most of you have that drink water every morning when you get up before anything else. You know, that is a consistency. So if you can, and anybody can do that, no matter where you are in the world, whatever's happening, you can get up in the morning and stick to that one thing. Most of us can stick to a protein shake or sources of protein in every meal. So it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you can do that. With you're out with kids, you're going out to different meals, you can stick to that. So it's thinking of those things in preparation for when you're going away or work. What can I stick to that is a non-negotiable minimum that helps me feel like I'm in control and I'm the kind of woman that is consistent? And that is more important than motivation, as you've heard me. Yeah, Nancy, I would say yeah, an indication with you. Commitment over motivation, as I go on and on and on about in these calls, is don't think I've got to feel motivated to do something. You have to assume you do not feel motivated, and you think about your structure, so your commitment. So if you are away, things that remove friction, anything that can remove friction from you doing the thing, because your mind will take over. So if there's anything in the way to delay you doing that thing, then your brain will have time to take over and add little insinuations that you should not do things. So for instance, if you're away and your movement, your non-negotiable minimum is I'm going to walk for X, 10 minutes a day, then it makes it really easy to make sure that you've got your trainers. And a big thing for me is that you've got your keys as well. I used to flap and couldn't find my keys until I actually put a key hook up on the wall, because I used to just, flap around for half an hour swearing, and then I'd be like, I've missed completely everything. I can't find my keys. So just anything that will help prevent you allowing yourself to not do the thing that you've committed to as your non-negotiable. And then ticking off habits, in your app, if you're in the Kickass community, there are things you tick off. If you start building those up, then it can help you feel like there's visible progress, even if it's that habit streak of your water or your protein. That's why those things are on there. So you have that kind of streak that you can see and keep it going. Now, some of you might know of my company before, Girls Run the World, where in January I used to run every day of January. And so many women managed to do that through horrible weather like this for 34, 31 to 34 days, 31 days of January. And I think the difference was that it was just tracking it and to a certain extent doing that thing every day that actually makes it easier than sometimes sticking to try and doing things every other day if you just commit to these non-negotiables. And then there's this science around never miss something twice rule. So if you miss a walk, fine, don't miss it again. Reset immediately. So you don't allow that to spiral into like 2 days, and then it's really easy to let that go. And referring back to Run Yuri, the Girls Run the World Run Every Day, is that's I think why it worked so well is because people would get to like 10 days having gone out in awful weather and snow and frost and freezing cold. And then you get to 10 days and you think, well, why would I miss it now? What's the point of the 10 days that have just gone? So try and get into that consistency mindset around no matter where you are, no matter whatever happens. And then nutrition. So I think it's a really important thing for you all to recognize, to think of, to change your mindset around food and to remember it's not a diet. So you've got to get rid of that idea of a diet in your mindset because then when you do go away or when you are out of your routine, it's not that difficult because you're not on a diet. It's not like you're going to slip off your diet. It's just nutrition that feeds your bones, brain, and body, that gives you the energy and that helps you maintain a healthy body composition. So those simple anchors work anywhere. Anywhere you are in the world, whatever's happening, you prioritize your protein in all meals. It's not that difficult to think, okay, I'm going to get some yogurt in my breakfast. I'm going to get some fish or eggs in my lunch. I'm going to get some meat in my dinner. It's not that hard. You can do that wherever you are. Eating like three structured meals instead of constant picking. Again, that might be a little bit harder depending on where you are. But again, it's not that hard if you still think about that kind of, like I've said before about structuring your day. So, say if you have that routine of structuring your week, but you can't do that because you're away, you just get up in the morning and look at your day, no matter how mad it is, whether it's like I've got to go to look after my mum and then I've got to go to look after the teenagers or I'm away. Just think, well, I'm just going to structure my day. I know I'm going to take, I don't know, the kids to bowling at that time. Then I've got to go to look after my mum at that time. Fit the other bits in and take care of yourself in terms of your eating because it will give you the fuel and the energy to cope with everything else. Portable snack strategy, there are, roasted or edamame beans. And nowadays there are, I've been running around quite a lot lately. There are so many good sources of, grab and go stuff. If you go into a Pret and a Leon, all those kind of places, or a supermarket. But just make sure that you do it before you're hungry rather than running in when you are hungry, because then it's much harder to resist the stuff. Um, and then also remember that every decent meal counts. So obviously during half term, there are going to be times. I was in Camden Market with my niece the other day, and we had something that wasn't ideal. But one meal does not make a day. So just because one meal wasn't ideal, you don't have to then go, oh, well, I might as well have that donut as well. And I might as well get on the train and have like a massive bar of chocolate, a packet of crisps, and a little thing of wine. It's just one meal. So the rest of the time go back to nutrition because it's going to make you feel better. Both from the point of view of that you've stuck to consistency, but also from the point of view is it's stable, like stabilizing your blood sugar and your energy. Um, and small moments trump perfection. So you're not going to be able to be perfect when you're traveling with work. You're not going to be able to be perfect when you in half term. You might not be able to be perfect when you might be visiting people in hospital or whatever it is, and there's the perfect food's not there, or you're really busy and you haven't been able to grab something. Um, but progress comes from actually getting consistency in your day of something. So one proper breakfast, one walk between meetings, one balanced dinner, a glass of water instead of a second coffee. So those things matter. So Health and progress and change in your body composition or in your strength and fitness isn't built in perfect weeks. It's actually built in the messy weeks. But it's about staying consistent in those messy weeks and not being all or nothing about it and just letting it all go and just think, I will do it when everything's back to normal. And then when you do return to your routine, again, it's that all or nothing mindset. Don't go back to routine and go, oh, I've got to make up for the fact that I had this, that, or the other, or I've missed this workout and that work, and then just blaze your way into doing too many workouts, punishing yourself by like restricting more calories because that doesn't work. And it's just returning as soon as possible to the baseline habits that you had beforehand. So, your normal training, your normal hydration, get your structure back in your diary. Your routine day-to-day weeks don't change that much. So, going back to them shouldn't be too difficult. And then also, what I always like to say as well is be open that when you are away from your routine, what shows up, because sometimes some things show up that can give you pause and think, well, actually, I'm going to adopt that back into my normal routine. There's the obvious things like, maybe the amazing meal. So, say if you're traveling, it can be about going out. And so when you go out for dinner, don't just think, oh no, I've got to like be really careful about what I choose. You also got thinking about, well, actually I haven't had that. I'm going to really explore that. And then I'm going to think, how do I create that recipe in a nourishing way when I get home? So it's about trying things rather than like going into a flap about it. Other things can be like, for instance, when I go to France for like 2 or 3 months of the year, and what I very quickly discovered is unless you go out between 12 and 2 for your lunch, you are done. In fact, you can't get any food or you can't go to the supermarket, so everything shuts. And actually, what is quite nice about that is that you start to then adopt this kind of like, oh, actually, I'm going to have my lunch and not push through because in France, if you don't stop and have your lunch, then you can't get any lunch. So there are things that are interesting about being away and out of your routine if you're open to it. And obviously, if you're on holiday, then the lovely thing about being on holiday is you can sometimes be more present when you're eating, rather than just eating at your desk or rushing through things. So really, the key message, which is often my key message, is consistency is not about perfection. It's about staying connected to the woman who looks after yourself, even when life gets chaotic, because there is no doubt that this life stage is chaotic. And if you're going to constantly be like, oh, that's a messy week, I won't do anything. That's a messy week. You'll have like one good week out of four. So messy weeks don't undo progress. If you can stay consistent to those anchors, stay intentional, then it's going to make it much easier when you do get back into routine to stay consistent.